Imagine this: you walk into a crowded room, a place buzzing with laughter and endless conversations. Hands shake, smiles are exchanged, and everyone seems caught up in what they believe to be meaningful connections. The atmosphere feels electric, at least on the surface. But then your eyes catch someone standing quietly in the corner. They're not nervous, not awkward, not lonely. Instead, they look completely indifferent to the scene unfolding before them. While the crowd delights in small talk and pleasantries, their mind is elsewhere, lost in something far deeper, far more compelling. Why does this happen? Why do intelligent people so often detach from social life? Is it arrogance? Is it introversion? Or is there something much deeper, an invisible thread that ties intelligence to solitude? Today we're diving into the provocative insights of Arthur Schopenhauer, a philosopher who dared to challenge the assumptions most of us take for granted. He argued that intelligence and solitude are inseparable, and this truth may forever change the way you see your own relationships. But that's just the beginning, because when we look through the lenses of modern psychology, sociology, and history, a much larger picture comes into focus. From the pressure to conform to the hidden costs of living against our authentic nature, we'll uncover a startling realization. Happiness might not be found in the number of friends you have, but in the depth of your own mind. And if you stay with me until the very end, you'll discover the most profound insight of all, a truth powerful enough to shift the way you see not just social life, but your entire existence. Because the real question isn't only, why don't intelligent people care about social life? It's also, what could you find if you dared to walk that same path yourself? Think about the last time you walked away from a social gathering feeling drained instead of energized. Everyone else seemed to thrive on the chatter, but you felt as though your energy had been siphoned away. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. Many highly intelligent individuals report that the more they engage in social interactions, the less satisfied they feel. Not because they dislike people, but because they see through the illusion of connection. Schopenhauer argued that most conversations are filled with trivialities, gossip, repetition, and predictable scripts that offer little substance. For the average person, this chatter feels essential. It fills the silence and distracts from the emptiness they fear. But for someone with a rich inner world, these exchanges can feel hollow, even pointless. Why talk for the sake of noise when your own thoughts, questions, and ideas provide a far deeper well of stimulation? This isn't arrogance, it's clarity. Intelligent people recognize the hidden pattern in social life. Much of what we call connection is in reality a ritual of conformity. We follow the rules of politeness, suppress our authentic selves, and recycle the same conversations over and over again just to maintain harmony. To a sharp mind, this feels less like bonding and more like acting on a stage. But here's where it gets interesting. Psychology backs this up. Studies show that individuals with higher intelligence often report lower satisfaction from frequent socializing. It's not because they're antisocial, it's because they require depth. They long for conversations that go beyond surface-level chatter, discussions that challenge their perspective and engage their curiosity. Without that, socializing becomes not a source of joy, but a form of exhaustion. So ask yourself, how many of your conversations today were truly meaningful? How many left you with a new insight, a fresh perspective, or a genuine emotional connection? If the answer is not many, then perhaps you've already glimpsed the very truth Schopenhauer was pointing to. And this leads us to a deeper question. If much of social life is built on illusion, what happens when someone refuses to play along? What becomes of those who choose authenticity over acceptance, depth over comfort? That's where we're headed next, because the answer not only explains why intelligent people often stand apart, but also reveals a hidden power in solitude that most of society has overlooked. Imagine yourself in the middle of a conversation where every word feels rehearsed. People laugh at the right moments, nod politely, and avoid saying anything that might disrupt the flow. On the surface, this looks like connection. But if you look closer, you'll notice something else: conformity. Arthur Schopenhauer believed that social life demands a subtle but constant sacrifice of authenticity. We bend our words, soften our truths, and mold our personalities just enough to fit in. Most people accept this as the price of belonging. But for highly intelligent individuals, this price is often too high. Why? Because the sharper the mind, the more it notices the mass. Intelligence sharpens awareness of social scripts, of unspoken rules, of the way people often say, what's safe instead of what's real. And once you see through these patterns, it becomes harder to participate in them. It's like being at a theater and suddenly realizing the play is scripted. You can't unsee it. The illusion is broken. History is filled with examples of brilliant minds who refused to play along. Emily Dickinson withdrew into her own world rather than endure shallow exchanges. Nikola Tesla avoided small talk and gatherings, dedicating his energy to invention. Isaac Newton spent years in solitude not because he couldn't socialize, but because he saw little value in doing so. They weren't antisocial, they were unwilling to trade authenticity for acceptance. Modern psychology echoes this. Research shows that highly intelligent people are less motivated by social approval. While others may crave validation, intelligent individuals often find fulfillment in self-expression, curiosity, and personal mastery. They are not immune to loneliness, but they are far less willing to compromise their inner truth for the sake of fitting in. So here's the question worth asking. Are we socializing because we truly want to, or because we fear the consequences of standing apart? If our connections require us to constantly edit who we are, can we even call them real? This is the silent trap of conformity. Most people fall into it without ever realizing. But intelligent minds, they feel the weight of it immediately, and that weight often pushes them towards solitude. And yet solitude itself has a paradox. For some, it feels like loneliness. For others, it becomes a sanctuary. So what's the difference? That's the question Schopenhauer challenges us to explore next. Picture this: two people sit alone in their rooms. One feels restless, reaching for their phone, desperate for distraction. The silence feels heavy, almost unbearable. The other sits calmly immersed in thought, sketching out ideas, reading, or simply letting their mind wander. On the outside, both look the same alone. But inside, they are living two completely different realities. Schopenhauer drew a sharp distinction between solitude and loneliness. Loneliness, he said, is what happens when being alone feels like a void, when silence reminds you of what's missing. Solitude, on the other hand, is what happens when your inner world is so rich that being alone feels like freedom. For the intelligent person, solitude is not a punishment, it's nourishment. Think about the great minds of history. Isaac Newton spent long stretches in isolation while uncovering the laws of motion. Emily Dickinson wrote poetry that reshaped literature while rarely leaving her home. Nikola Tesla famously avoided traditional companionship, pouring his energy into creation instead. To them, solitude wasn't emptiness, it was possibility. Modern research supports this ancient insight. Studies show that people with higher intelligence often experience greater life satisfaction with fewer social interactions. It's not that they don't value people, it's that their minds provide a constant stream of stimulation. For them, solitude isn't about being cut off, it's about being connected to something deeper inside themselves. But here's where the paradox comes in. Society tells us that being alone is a sign of weakness, that the happiest people are the most social. From childhood, we're taught that friends equal worth. The problem is this conditioning often confuses activity with fulfillment. Just because you're surrounded by people doesn't mean you feel alive. In fact, as Schopenhauer observed, you can feel most disconnected when you're standing in the middle of a crowd. So what does this mean for us? It means that solitude is not the enemy. For those who can embrace it, solitude becomes a gateway to clarity, to creativity, to self-discovery. But for those who fear it, solitude becomes a shadow they run from, filling the silence with endless noise. This brings us to a critical turning point. If solitude is a gift for the intelligent mind, what exactly makes social life feel so draining, even unnecessary? To answer that, we need to look deeper into the hidden forces that drive most human interactions, forces that Schopenhauer was quick to expose. Take a step back and think about the last few conversations you had. Were they filled with genuine curiosity, deep listening, and raw honesty? Or were they laced with subtle competition, politeness, and the quiet hunt for validation? Schopenhauer argued that most human interactions are not driven by truth, but by need. In his eyes, friendships and social bonds are often transactional. People connect not because of profound alignment, but because of circumstance, the office they work in, the school they attend, the neighborhood they share. When those circumstances change, so do the relationships. The bond dissolves not because anyone did anything wrong, but because the foundation was never truly about understanding. It was about convenience. This perspective is uncomfortable because it strips away one of our favorite illusions, that human relationships are inherently sacred. But when you look closely, you'll see the pattern. How many friends have faded from your life simply because your lives no longer overlapped? How many conversations feel more like habit than genuine connection? Intelligent individuals notice this immediately. They sense when a friendship is built on proximity instead of depth, when someone seeks validation rather than authenticity. For them, engaging in these patterns feels like eating empty calories. It fills the moment but leaves them starving for something real. Modern psychology echoes this with research on social motivation. Many people socialize to regulate emotions, boost self-esteem, or avoid discomfort. None of these motives are wrong, but they reveal why interactions can feel shallow. If the purpose of the exchange is in truth, then it risks becoming performance. And performance is draining, especially for a mind that craves substance. So where does this leave the intelligent person? Often it pushes them towards selectivity. They don't abandon social life completely, but they choose carefully. They seek conversations that challenge them, relationships that expand them, and communities built on authenticity rather than obligation. This is why so many great thinkers were misunderstood. Their refusal to settle for surface-level interactions made them seem distant or aloof. In reality, they were hungry for something most people avoid: depth. And this hunger leads to an even deeper realization that the real problem isn't other people, but the very system of distraction and conformity that society builds around us. So what happens when intelligent people begin to see through that system? That's where we'll go next. Look around at the rhythm of modern life. Notifications buzz, emails pile up, conversations skim the surface, and social media demands constant performance. On the outside, it all looks like connection. But Schopenhauer and many thinkers after him would argue that much of this is not connection at all. It's distraction. Society conditions us to stay busy, to keep talking, to keep scrolling, to never sit still long enough to confront ourselves. From childhood, we're taught that silence is awkward, that being alone is undesirable, and that social approval is the ultimate prize. The result, most people live in a constant state of outward focus, terrified of what they might find if they turned inward. Intelligent individuals often resist this system instinctively. They recognize that endless chatter and constant social activity are not signs of fulfillment, but symptoms of avoidance. When conversations revolve around gossip, when gatherings are fueled by appearances, when interactions feel more like rehearsals than revelations, they see the emptiness behind the curtain. And once you see it, it's impossible to unsee. Modern psychology describes a similar dynamic: the hedonic treadmill. No matter how much stimulation we consume, whether through social approval or digital entertainment, the satisfaction fades quickly. We adapt, we crave the next hit, and the cycle begins again. For the average person, this treadmill is invisible. For the intelligent person, it feels unbearable. This is why solitude becomes not just a preference, but a necessity. Alone, the intelligent mind can break free from the treadmill, free from the noise, and free from the pressure to perform. Solitude becomes the one place where authenticity isn't compromised, where thought can flow without interruption, where meaning can finally take root. But here's the paradox. While solitude liberates, it also isolates. Intelligent individuals see through the distractions of society, but in doing so, they often feel more distant from others. This raises a difficult question. If most social life is built on performance and distraction, should intelligent people withdraw entirely? Or is there still a way to engage meaningfully with the world without being consumed by it? To answer this, we have to examine the delicate balance between detachment and connection, and why the wisest among us refuse to cut themselves off completely. Picture a pendulum swinging between two extremes. On one side, total immersion in social life, constant parties, endless networking, shallow conversations that leave little space for self-reflection. On the other side, complete withdrawal, a life of isolation, cut off from the warmth, unpredictability, and lessons that relationships can bring. Schopenhauer believed the intelligent person tends to swing closer to solitude, but he warned against letting detachment harden into contempt. This is where nuance matters. Solitude, when chosen deliberately, can be the soil of creativity and wisdom. But solitude born of bitterness or arrogance can calcify into alienation. The challenge for the intelligent individual isn't to avoid people altogether, it's to engage selectively, to cultivate relationships not out of fear of loneliness, but out of genuine resonance. Think of history's great minds. Leonardo da Vinci surrounded himself with patrons and collaborators when it served his vision, but retreated when he needed space to create. Nikola Tesla, though famously solitary, still engaged with investors and colleagues to bring his inventions to life. Even Schopenhauer himself, despite his reputation for cynicism, shared his work with the world, knowing that wisdom has little value if kept entirely hidden. Modern research supports this balance. Studies in positive psychology suggest that while depth matters more than breadth in relationships, having at least a handful of authentic connections strongly correlates with resilience and well-being. For intelligent people, this means the key isn't to abandon social life, but to redefine it. A single meaningful conversation can outweigh 100 trivial ones. So what does this look like in practice? It means seeking out friends who challenge your perspective instead of reinforcing your comfort zone. It means prioritizing quality over quantity, small circles of trust over sprawling networks. It means recognizing that while solitude fuels the inner world, authentic relationships provide the mirror we sometimes need to see ourselves more clearly. And here lies the turning point. If social life isn't inherently meaningless, but most of it is, then the intelligent person's task is not rejection, but discernment. To choose deliberately to engage wisely and to refuse to dilute their inner life for the sake of shallow approval. But that leaves us with another question. If intelligent people don't chase social validation, what do they pursue instead? The answer lies in the one thing Schopenhauer believed was more valuable than any crowd wisdom. If intelligent people aren't chasing popularity, attention, or constant companionship, what exactly drives them? Schopenhauer believed the answer was simple but profound wisdom. To him, the highest calling wasn't to be admired, but to understand, to see life more clearly than the illusions society wraps it in. Most people, he argued, spend their lives in restless pursuit, chasing recognition, chasing pleasure, chasing distractions that never truly satisfy. Even when they get what they want, the promotion, the relationship, the applause, the fulfillment fades quickly, replaced by the next craving. This cycle of desire, achievement, and dissatisfaction is endless. And while the average person may stay trapped in it, the intelligent person often notices the pattern and begins to step away. Think of Leonardo da Vinci, consumed not by the approval of others, but by his endless curiosity. Or Nikola Tesla, who chose invention over marriage because he saw relationships as a potential diversion from his purpose. These individuals weren't detached because they lacked the ability to socialize. They were detached because they found something more compelling: the pursuit of knowledge, creation, and truth. Modern psychology aligns with this as well. Research shows that people with higher cognitive abilities often prioritize self-development and mastery over social validation. They are more motivated by growth than by applause. This doesn't mean they don't enjoy connection. It means connection isn't their compass. But here's the paradox: the pursuit of wisdom often requires a kind of detachment. You can't see the world clearly if you're too entangled in its performances. You can't hear your own thoughts if you're drowned in the noise of constant chatter. For the intelligent person, solitude isn't just a preference. It's the condition that allows wisdom to grow. And yet this pursuit comes with its own burden. The clearer you see, the harder it is to tolerate illusion. The more you understand, the less willing you are to play along with the scripts others accept without question. Schopenhauer called this the burden of clarity, the weight of seeing through the illusions most people live by. So where does this leave us? It leads to a radical shift for the intelligent. The measure of life is not in how socially successful they are, but in how deeply they are able to think, create, and understand. But if wisdom is the ultimate pursuit, then what role, if any, do relationships still play? Can they support the journey inward, or do they always distract from it? That's the paradox we'll confront next. At this point, it might seem like Schopenhauer was urging us to abandon relationships altogether. But that's not quite true. He wasn't blind to the value of human connection. He simply believed that most connections are built on shallow ground. For intelligent people, the task is not to reject relationships, but to redefine them. Instead of seeking company out of fear of being alone, they seek it out of genuine alignment. Instead of building friendships on convenience, shared schools, offices, or routines, they look for bonds rooted in authenticity, curiosity, and mutual growth. For them, relationships are not an escape from solitude, but an extension of it, a chance to share the richness of their inner world with someone who can actually understand. History offers countless examples. Emily Dickinson's deepest connections were forged not through parties or social circles, but through letters exchanges of thought and feeling with a select few who could meet her at her level of depth. Philosophers, scientists, and artists across centuries often maintained small, carefully chosen circles where conversation wasn't about gossip, but about truth, ideas, and creation. Modern psychology confirms this distinction. Research shows that people with higher intelligence often report fewer friendships, but stronger ones. They're not drawn to crowds, they're drawn to resonance. To them, one honest conversation can be more nourishing than a dozen evenings of small talk. But there's another layer here, a warning Schopenhauer gave. He cautioned against letting intellectual superiority turn into contempt. It's easy, he said, for the intelligent to dismiss others as shallow or unworthy. But wisdom requires humility to understand society, to engage without being consumed by it, and to maintain compassion even while standing apart. So what does this mean for us? It means that solitude and relationships don't have to be enemies. They can exist in balance as long as we choose with intention. The intelligent person doesn't isolate because they despise people. They step back because they value truth. And when they do connect, it's not to fill a void, but to share something real. And this brings us to the final, most profound insight. If intelligent people don't place their worth in social life, then where do they place it? What do they value above all else? The answer is both unsettling and liberating, and it might change the way you see your own life. So here we arrive at the heart of it all. If intelligent people don't anchor their lives in social validation, if they don't measure happiness by how many friends they have or how often they're invited out, then what do they value above everything else? Schopenhauer's answer was as radical as it was liberating. Fulfillment comes not from the outside, but from within. He argued that most people chase illusions, relationships built on convenience, achievements pursued for applause, pleasures that fade as quickly as they arrive. They move from one craving to the next, never pausing long enough to question why the satisfaction never lasts. But the intelligent person, they see through the cycle. They realize that external validation can never provide lasting peace. The only true foundation is inner richness, the ability to think independently, to create freely, and to be at home in one's own mind. This is why solitude, far from being a weakness, becomes a strength. It's in solitude that the mind sharpens, that creativity blossoms, that self-discovery takes root. And it's through solitude that intelligent individuals often achieve their most profound insights, not because they reject people, but because they refuse to lose themselves in distractions. Modern psychology echoes this wisdom. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, wrote that the deepest fulfillment doesn't come from pleasure or power, but from meaning. And meaning, he insisted, is something each of us must cultivate for ourselves. No crowd can give it to us. No applause can secure it. So what does this mean for you? It means the path to freedom may not be in chasing more friends, more attention, more noise, but in daring to embrace less, to step back from the treadmill of validation and ask the harder questions. What truly matters to me? What do I create when no one is watching? Who am I when the crowd falls silent? Schopenhauer's final revelation is both unsettling and empowering. The most intelligent among us don't fear solitude because they've discovered that the deepest form of fulfillment is not found in the presence of others, but in the cultivation of the self. So now the question turns to you. What would your life look like if you stopped running from solitude and started embracing it? What might you uncover if you dared to find meaning not in the crowd, but in yourself? Perhaps the greatest minds in history weren't outliers at all. Perhaps they were pioneers, showing us that true freedom is not in being liked, but in being whole.